Multiple greetings. My name is Paul Eaton. I'm an assistant professor at Sam Houston State University. And in this screencast, I want to talk about some common APA mistakes that I see students making in the hope that you will alleviate those mistakes in your own writing. So let's talk first about setting up your document. It's important to understand that your running head needs to be in the same font as your in-body text. Sometimes Microsoft Word in particular has a different default font for your running head and your in-text. So as you're setting your document up, make sure that your fonts match up correctly. It's also important to keep in mind that the first page of any APA document is going to be formatted differently than the remainder of your document, and I'm going to talk about that in the next two slides. And then it's also important to check and make sure that your default is set to 1-inch margins. If your default is not set, you can easily change your margins utilizing the toolbar at the top of Microsoft Word. Here's a common first page. What you can see here is that at the top I have my running head. The words running head are in lowercase, and the actual running head will be in all capital letters. I've also included the page number here on this page. Students often have a difficult time formatting the first page of a document. If you click on the header and footer section, which you can see right here, there's a little box that says different first page. This is how you can set up your running head differently on your first page as opposed to the rest of your document, just by clicking this little arrow. So it's important to make sure that you are doing that on the first page. It's also important to make sure that you know that your title page should only contain the title of your manuscript, your name, and your institutional affiliation. The remainder of your document will just have your selected running head without the words running head, and that will be in all caps, and of course you'll include your page numbers. Let's talk about some common in-text citations. This is the actual body of text that you're writing, and some common mistakes that people make in terms of citing appropriately in text. One mistake I see often is the utilization of page numbers in text. You only utilize page numbers when you're using a direct quote. For example, if you were writing, Howard Hamilton, Kouijet, and Cooper state, quote, multiculturalism is embedded in the social and systemic structure of our society, end quote, you would include the page number here because you're quoting a direct quote from the authors. However, if you were paraphrasing this, you would not include a page number. The second example here is an incorrect use of page numbers in text. You can see that I'm not using a direct quote, but instead I'm paraphrasing the idea that the authors discuss multiculturalism's role within society, but since it's not a direct quote, I would not use the page number. Block quotes often throw people off as well. I would encourage you to look at the APA manual, page 92 and 171, for more detail about block quoting in text. But block quotes are defined as 40 plus words, and when you're citing in text a block quote, you need to make sure that the full text of the quote is fully indented, that it's double spaced, and you do not utilize quotation marks. For example, in this particular example that I've provided, discussing the importance of multiculturalism, Howard Hamilton, Kouijet, and Cooper state, quote, our intention in this book is not to be divisive, but to help readers understand that it is important to value, respect, and embrace our cultural differences. In addition, we must also understand that the intersections of our lives create a framework of commonalities, end quote. You can see here that since there are more than 40 words, I need a block quote. And in addition, one other thing to point out is that when you're utilizing a block quote, the punctuation comes at the end of the quote, and then you put the page number reference. Once again, you do not use quotation marks when you are utilizing a block quote. Another common mistake is how to cite multiple authors in text. I would encourage you to look at page 177 of the APA manual to better understand this issue. When you're writing in text, the first time that you're citing a source, you need to list all the authors. For example, here, there are 3 authors to this book, and the first time I list them in text, I'm going to list all 3 authors by last name. Subsequently, every time you utilize that same source in your text, if there are 3 or more authors, you utilize the et al. Another common mistake is where to place the punctuation in the et al. You can see here that the period comes after the al. Again, you only use et al. When a piece has more than 3 authors and when you've already cited it with the full authors the first time in text. Citing books, journal articles, and journal titles in texts can also confuse people. There are different rules for in-text citation than reference list citation, and this is often why people get confused. For books, you need to italicize and capitalize almost all the letters. By almost all the letters, I mean that you would not capitalize a word such as of or a, but you would capitalize most of the letters in the title of a book. For journal titles, you have a similar situation. In text, you'll italicize and capitalize almost all the letters. And finally, with article titles, in text, you use quotations, and you capitalize almost all the letters. Here I've provided a few examples. In the book, What is Posthumanism? Woolf, you can see here that the title of the book, What is Posthumanism? Is italicized, and the word is not capitalized, but what in posthumanism is. Similarly, you see here in the second example, Snase's article, Bewildering Education, first appeared in the Journal of Curriculum and Pedagogy. The title of the article is placed in quotation marks, and the title of the journal is italicized. Again, this is for in-text citations. I'll talk more about reference list citations at the end of this presentation. It's important when you're done with your document that you list on a reference list all of the sources that you've utilized in text. You need to make sure that you're ordering your references alphabetically, and that you order references by date of publication. What this means is that if you use more than one source by the same author, you want to list the earliest published work first, followed by the latest published work last. It's also important to keep in mind that sometimes you might be utilizing sources by the same author where there'll be single author on a journal article or a book, and maybe be a contributing author with multiple other people. In this case, you want to make sure that you list all of the author's single-authored pieces first, and then list any pieces where they are multiple author. I've provided an example here about Susan Jones's work, where I listed first her journal article, Toward Inclusive Theory, Disability as Social Construction, which she solo-authored, and then included her book, which she co-authored with Elisa Avis, Identity Development of College Students, Advancing Frameworks for Multiple Dimensions of Identity. Journal article citation on a reference list is different than in text. Again, I encourage you to look at page 198 of the APA manual for understanding how to list journal articles on the reference list. Here are some common mistakes that people often make. First, you need to make sure that when you're listing people's first name initials, if they have more than one initial, that you put a space between those letters. Titles are always capital first letter and then lowercase for the remainder of the journal article title. If there's a colon in the journal article title, you'll capitalize the first letter after a colon. Proper nouns are always capitalized. And the journal title should be italicized. The volume is also italicized, but the issue is not. Here I've provided an example. You can see that this author, Lee, has a first name and a middle name on her manuscript. So between the E and the B, I've placed a space. I've also capitalized the proper noun African American in the title of the journal article. And then you can see that the journal title itself is capitalized, as is the volume number, but not the issue number, which is located in parentheses. For books, look on page 202 of the APA manual. Books on a reference list, you capitalize only the first letter, and then you also would capitalize the first letter of a word after a colon if the book has a colon in its title. Once again, proper nouns are always capitalized. And I often see people making mistakes in terms of the city, state, and publisher. Here I've provided an example. Pasquarella and Terenzini's book, How College Affects Students, A Third Decade of Research. Please note that I capitalized the letter A after the colon, and that for the city and state, I've included the city, San Francisco, and the state, CA, California, followed by the name of the publisher after the colon. Newspaper articles, online news sources, and magazines can also be confusing. Page 200 of the APA manual will be helpful here. When you're citing these on a reference list, you need to make sure that you're including the date of publication. You're going to capitalize almost all the letters of the publication title. If you're citing this source from a printed source, for example, an actual hard copy newspaper or magazine, you'll want to include the page number or numbers of the article that you're referencing. If you found the news article online, then you want to make sure that you include the retrieved from and then the website where other people can locate that. For example, here is an article that was looked up on the Chronicle of Higher Education. You see that I included the author, the year and the date of publication, the name of the article, the publication title, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and since I found this source online, where I retrieved it from. Internet sources are becoming increasingly popular as well. For example, web blogs, videos, and other digital sources. Pages 214 to 215 of the APA manual tell you how to cite these on your reference list. Much like a newspaper or magazine article, you'll want to include the date of publication, as well as the type of source that you're citing. For example, if it's a blog, APA refers to this as a web blog post. And if it's a video, such as a YouTube video or a TED Talk, you would refer to this as a video file. Here I've provided an example from my own blog and how you would cite that appropriately. So some closing thoughts. People often get frightened by APA. There's a lot of rules and there's a lot of things that you have to think about and know, but you should not let APA frighten you. You must become familiar with the APA manual and guidebook. Look through it. Use the index to try to figure out the answers to any questions you may have. And don't forget that with so many rules and different ways of citing in text and on reference list, it's very easy, even for people who do this professionally, to become confused. So if you have a question, it's better to verify than be incorrect. Go back and look up the appropriate way to cite something in text or on a reference list, because using correct APA citation is a responsibility of our ethical practice as scholar practitioners. I hope you found this video helpful, and best of luck formatting your papers APA style.